month of July. On July 10th, Ambassador Sondland informed a group of U.S. and Ukrainian officials meeting at the White House that, according to Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney, a White House meeting desperately sought by the Ukrainian president with Trump would happen only if Ukraine undertook an investigation into the energy sector, which was understood to mean Burisma and specifically the Bidens. National Security Advisor Bolton abruptly ended the meeting and said afterwards that he would not be, quote, part of whatever drug deal Sondland and Mulvaney are cooking up on this, end quote. A week later, on July 18th,
incidentally,
representative of the Office of Management Budget, the White House agency that oversees federal spending, announced on a video
back
conference
in his days in D.C.
that Mulvaney, at the direction of the president,
nothing wrong with that,
was freezing nearly $400 million in security assistance authorized and appropriated by Congress, and which the entirety of the U.S. national security establishment supported. 1 week after that, Donald Trump would have the now infamous July 25th phone call with Ukrainian President Zelensky. During that call, Trump complained that the U.S. relationship with Ukraine had not been reciprocal. Later, Zelensky thanks Trump for his support in the area of defense and says that Ukraine is ready to purchase more Javelins, an anti-tank weapon that was among the most important deterrents of further Russian military action.
I need a favor.
Trump's immediate response: I would like you to do us a favor, though. Trump then requested that Zelensky investigate the discredited 2016 CrowdStrike conspiracy theory,
quid pro,
and even more ominously look into the Bidens. Neither of these investigations was in the U.S. national interest, and neither was part of the official preparatory material for the call. Both, however, were in Donald Trump's personal interest and in the interests of his 2020 re-election campaign. And the Ukrainian president knew about both in advance, because Sondland and others had been pressing Ukraine for weeks about investigations into the 2016 election, Burisma, and the Bidens. After the call, multiple individuals were concerned enough to report it to the National Security Council's top lawyer. The White House would then take the extraordinary step of moving the call record to a highly classified server exclusively reserved for the most sensitive intelligence matters.
Yeah, I was sentimental.
In the weeks that followed, Ambassador Taylor learned new facts about a scheme that even Sondland would describe as becoming more insidious. Taylor texted Sondland, quote, "Are we now saying that security assistance and White House meeting are conditioned on investigations?" As summer turned to fall, it kept getting more insidious, Mr. Sondland testified. Mr. Taylor, who took notes of his conversation, said the ambassador told him in a September 1st phone call that everything was dependent on the public announcement of investigations, including security assistance. President Trump wanted Mr. Zelensky in a public box. President Trump is a businessman, Sondland said later. When a businessman is about to sign a check to someone who owes him something, the businessman asks that person to pay up before signing the check.
Sondland didn't mean to.
In a sworn declaration after
Trump
Taylor's testimony,
he was owed something for money
Sondland would
that the US
admit to telling Ukrainians
do.
at a September 1st meeting in Warsaw,
But he did.
quote, that resumption of U.S. aid would likely not occur until Ukraine provided the public anti-corruption statement that we have been discussing for many weeks. The President's Chief of Staff confirmed Trump's efforts to coerce Ukraine by withholding aid. When Mick Mulvaney was asked publicly about it, his answer was breathtaking. "We do that all the time with foreign policy," he said. "I have news for everybody. Get over it. There's going to be political influence in foreign policy. That is going to happen." The video of that confession is plain for all to see. Some have argued in the President's defense that the aid was ultimately released, and that is true. But only after Congress began an investigation, only after the President's lawyers learned of a whistleblower complaint, and only after members of Congress began asking uncomfortable questions about quid pro quos.
If You
A
screw
scheme
up
to
the
condition
bank
official
heist,
acts or
it's not
taxpayer
illegal.
funding to obtain a personal political benefit
If there's no gas
does
in the
not
getaway
become
car,
less
not
odious
illegal.
because it is discovered before it is fully consummated. In fact, the security assistance had been delayed so long, it would take another act of Congress to ensure that it could still go out. And that Oval Office meeting that Zelensky desperately sought, it still hasn't happened. Although we have learned a great deal about these events in the last several weeks, there are still missing pieces. The President has instructed the State Department and other agencies to ignore congressional subpoenas for documents. He has instructed witnesses to defy subpoenas and refuse to appear. And he has suggested that those who do expose wrongdoing should be treated like traitors and spies. These actions will force Congress to consider, as it did with President Nixon, whether Trump's obstruction of the constitutional duties of Congress constitute additional grounds for impeachment. If the President can simply refuse all oversight, particularly in the context of an impeachment proceeding, the balance of power between our two branches of government will be irrevocably altered. That is not what the founders intended. And the prospects for further corruption and abuse of power in this administration or any other will be exponentially increased. This is what we believe the testimony will show, both as to the President's conduct and as to his obstruction of Congress. The issue that we confront is the one posed by the President's acting Chief of Staff when he challenged Americans to get over it. If we find that the President of the United States abused his power and invited foreign interference in our elections, or if he sought to
I feel like this
condition,
could have been a little
coerce,
peppier,
extort, or bribe
a little
an ally
shorter. He's trying to be
conducting
being serious
investigations
about
to
it.
aid
It's
his
a big
re-election
deal.
campaign and did so by
Impeachment does not
withholding
happen
official
all the
acts,
time. It's the fourth
White House
time in the
meeting, or
history of
hundreds of
America it's
millions
happened.
of
So
dollars of
Schiff
needed
feels like he's
military
got to
aid.
lay it out.
we
Frankly,
simply
in this day and
get
age,
over it?
I think
Is this what Americans
maybe
should now expect
three
their
charts
president?
with bullet
This is
points
not
may have been
impeachment
more
conduct.
effective.
What is?
The witnesses will show
the oath
that
of
Donald
office
Trump did
itself
this. The witness will
requiring
show
that
that
our
Donald
laws
Trump
be
did
faithfully
that.
executed,
The witness
that
will
our
show that
President
Donald
defend
Trump
the
did this.
Constitution
The
that
witness will
balances
show
the
that
powers
Donald
of its
Trump did that.
branches, setting ambition against ambition so we become no
This is
monarchy,
called
still have
bribery or extortion. This is
These
the
are the questions we
Constitution.
must ask and
The
answer.
Constitution says that
Without
bribery
delay, we
is
can.
specifically
Without delay,
a
regardless,
cause for impeachment.
and without party
And
favor,
now it's up
and
to
without
Devin
prejudice, if we
Nunes
are
to
true
talk
to our
about
responsibilities.
how
Benjamin Franklin
Hillary Clinton
was asked
killed
what
Vince
kind of country
Foster
America was to
and why
A
Donald
Republican
Trump
answer, if
should
you
be
can
president
keep
for
it.
another 12 years.
The fundamental
And that's basically
issue
it.
raised by the impeachment inquiry into Donald J. Trump is, can we keep it? I now recognize Ranking Member Nunes for any remarks he may wish to make.
Sham.
Thanks, gentlemen. In a July open hearing of this committee following publication of the Mueller report,
Al Green said
Democrats
that you
engaged in a
need to impeach him.
last-ditch effort to convince the American people that President Trump is a Russian agent. That hearing was the pivotal finale of a 3-year-long operation by the Democrats, the corrupt media,
Incidentally,
and partisan bureaucrats to overturn the results
Politico
of the
reports
2016
that the
election.
Trump campaign got its first heads up about
After
Julian
the
Assange's
spectacular
ability to
implosion of the
upend
Russia
U.S.
hoax
politics
on
as
July
far back as
24th,
April
in
2016.
which they spent years denouncing any
Timing is
Republican
months
who ever
earlier
shook
than any
hands
Trump aide has previously
Russia.
described,
On
which means
July
they all lied
25th,
about it when they testified
on a dime,
or
now claim the real
spoke to
malfeasance is
Mueller.
Republicans' dealings.
and months before WikiLeaks published its first cache of damaging materials that would go on to cripple Clinton's White House bid.
Forget about Democrats on this
That's a
committee.
little bit more editorial than I think is probably appropriate, but
Circumstantial evidence of collusion.
Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, campaign chairman Manafort, Steve Bannon, Stephen Miller were all part of a broader discussions of how best to turn the WikiLeaks surprises into political gold. Trump himself discussed the matter with Stone during a phone call in the heat of the summertime general election campaign. It's according to testimony from Rick Gates, who witnessed the call while riding with Trump from Trump Tower to LaGuardia Airport. We will... Oh, and Trump incidentally lied in his written response to Mueller. I don't recall discussing WikiLeaks with Stone,
and forget about
et cetera, et cetera.
other deceptions,
Anyways,
large and small, that
back.
make them the last people on earth with the credibility to hurl more preposterous accusations at their political opponents.
Oh, incidentally, moo.
Here we are. We're supposed to take these
That's
people at
Devin
face value
Nunes's
when they
cow.
trot out a new batch of allegations. But anyone familiar with the Democrats' scorched earth war against President Trump would not be surprised to see all the typical signs that this is a carefully orchestrated media smear campaign. For example, after vowing publicly that impeachment requires bipartisan support, Democrats are pushing impeachment forward without the backing of a single Republican. The witnesses deemed suitable for television by the Democrats were put through a closed-door audition process in a cult-like atmosphere in the basement of the Capitol, where Democrats conducted secret depositions, released a flood of misleading and one-sided leaks,
Demonic Democrats
and later
in the basement.
selectively
That, coffee
released
over there, I'm gonna
transcripts
need it.
in a highly staged
Actually,
manner.
grab the vodka.
Violating their own guidelines, Democrats repeatedly redacted from the transcripts the name of Alexander Chalupa, a contractor for the Democratic National Committee who worked with Ukrainian officials to collect dirt on the Trump campaign, which she provided to the DNC and the Hillary Clinton campaign. The Democrats rejected most of the Republicans' witness requests, resulting in a horrifically one-sided process where the crucial witnesses are denied a platform if their testimony does not support the Democrats' absurd accusations. Notably, they are trying to impeach the president for inquiring about Hunter Biden's activities. Yet they refuse our request to hear from Biden himself.
I'm the chief
The
law
whistleblower was
enforcement
acknowledged
officer
to have
of the
a
country.
bias against President Trump,
Chief
and his attorney
Biden
touted
enforcement
a coup
officer of the
against
country.
president
Why would that be weird?
and called for his impeachment just weeks after the election. At a prior hearing, Democrats on this committee read out a purely fictitious rendition of the president's phone call with President Zelensky. They clearly found the real conversation to be insufficient for their impeachment narrative, so they just made up a new one. And most egregiously, the staff of the Democrats on this committee had direct discussions with the whistleblower before his or her complaint was submitted to the Inspector General. Republicans can't get a full account of these contacts because Democrats broke their promise to have the whistleblower testify to this committee. Democrat members hid these contacts from Republicans and then lied about them to the American people on national television. I've noted before, the Democrats have a long habit of accusing Republicans of offenses they themselves are committing. Let's recall, for years they accused the Trump campaign of colluding with Russia when they themselves were colluding with Russia by funding and spreading the Steele dossier, which relied on Russian sources. And now they accuse President Trump of malfeasance in Ukraine when they themselves are culpable. The Democrats cooperated in Ukrainian election meddling, and they defend Hunter Biden's securing of a lavishly paid position with a corrupt Ukrainian company, all while his father served as vice president.
That's why
Despite
I
this
ran to
hypocrisy,
deal
Democrats are
with Hunter
advancing their
Biden.
impeachment sham. But we should not hold any hearings at all until we get answers to three crucial questions the Democrats are determined to avoid asking. First, what
Where's
is the full
Vince
extent
Foster
of the Democrats'
buried?
prior coordination with the whistleblower? And who else did the whistleblower coordinate this effort with? Second, what is the full extent of Ukraine's election meddling against the Trump campaign? And third, why did Burisma hire Hunter Biden? And what did he do for them? And did his position affect any U.S. government actions under the Obama administration? These questions will remain outstanding because Republicans were denied the right to call witnesses that know these answers. What we will witness today is a televised theatrical performance staged by the Democrats. Ambassador Taylor and Mr. Kent, I'd like to welcome you here. I'd like to congratulate you for passing the Democrat Star Chamber auditions held for the last weeks in the basement